Hello, and welcome to the Shelly Show. I'm Shailendra, and you're watching this simulcast live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I hope you're all safe and observing the protocol in your area so we keep each other healthy, safe, and secure, considering some of the areas are still facing COVID 19. Anyways, let's move on. As we experience both the intended and unintended consequences of AI, a clear picture emerges of all the ways in which we can use it to create a better world. This is apart from the obvious objective to create a better world, better shareholder value, building better societies and corporations where we truly seek out ways to use AI with good intent and share knowledge on best practices should be a priority right now. In these difficult times of war in the Northern Hemisphere, I think AI can be of great help and value. Today, we will touch on a few areas where AI is already bringing remarkable benefits and possibly try and understand how it can help in making world a better place to live. For you to view this episode and other sections that I run on emerging technologies, I would request you to follow me so that you can be alerted when a live session is on. This gives you an opportunity to directly ask questions from our guests. So please press the follow button on LinkedIn and Twitter and subscribe button on YouTube and press the bell icon so that you're alerted when a live show is on. If you're watching this on Facebook, I suggest that you share this video, you like this video, and share this video with all the groups which you are part of, which work on the which talk about artificial intelligence. Also, if you're watching this live, please say a hi to us and tell us from which city are you joining us from. If you have any question, don't keep it to yourself. Just get to the comment section and write that question there. I will pick the question, your question, in the audience Q&A section, which will be at the end, in the last segment of this episode. Okay, without any further ado, let's bring in our guest. My first guest is Imtiaz, all the way from UK. He's a regular on this show, on this series, AI Insight series. He's a regular. He's the founder of an AI startup, Deep Learn Strategies, and I think most of you know him. So without any further ado, let me bring in Imtiaz. Hi, Imtiaz. Welcome to the AI Insight series. How are you doing?
Hi, Shailendra. Great to be here. Looking forward to this session, as ever.
Good stuff. Okay, let me bring my second guest. He's also a regular on this in the series, Utpal Chakraborty. He's an eminent data scientist, AI researcher, strategist, worked for L&T, IBM, Capgemini, and other MNCs. He was heading AI division for Yes Bank up until late, and he's now the chief digital officer for Allied Digital Services. So without any further ado, let me bring in Utpal. Hi Utpal, how are you doing?
Yeah, hi Shailendra. I'm good. Hi Imtiaz. So nice to be here in your show again. And today's topic is a very interesting topic, and excited to discuss with all eminent speakers today.
Good stuff. Thank you. And let me bring my third guest so that we just move on. Finally, my third guest is Sunil David. Sunil has 28 years of experience in the IT and the telecom industry and is currently the regional director for IoT for AT&T in India and is based out of Chennai. He's responsible for building the IoT strategy for India and the ASEAN regions and works with various internal stakeholders to ensure successful execution. He's also worked on building robust partner ecosystem for AT&T in the entire IoT value chain and is actively involved in a number of marketing initiatives to help enhance the AT&T brand in the IoT space. So, without any further ado, let me bring in Sunil. Hi, Sunil. Welcome to the Shelly Show, the AI Insight series. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shailendra, for inviting me. I'm doing well. Thank you. Looking forward to the discussion.
Good stuff. Hey, to all the guests, I ask one simple question. Tell us one fun fact about you that not many people know. So here is your chance to actually tell us one fun fact. Sunil, I was asking you. Tell us one fun fact about you.
I'm a hardcore foodie, Shailendra. I just love my food. So, wherever I go, I just make sure that I dish into the local cuisine of that particular place
Good stuff.
and indulge.
Good stuff. Okay, let's jump on to today's session. I'll try to keep it under 1 hour. Our shows go way over time, but today I'll try to control it and try to keep it under 1 hour and a bit. So let's talk about what's happening around the world in the current environment, where there is a war going between Ukraine and Russia. And so, one thing that comes to mind: how can AI help in stopping the war, or if not, how AI can help in the recovery process when the war is over? Let me ask that question to all my panelists. I'll start with Imtiaz. Imtiaz, what do you think? How can AI help in either stopping or even in the recovery process?
Well, thank you, Shailendra. It's a terrible tragedy what's happening right now, and you see the suffering of people at scale in Ukraine. And whilst there's unfortunate reality that in some cases automation and AI techniques may be used actually to propagate war, whether it's through fake news, etc., deep fakes that are going out there putting fake information. For example, there's one of President Zelensky holding a neo-Nazi swastika when the actual image is actually the one that's altered or doctored was just a plain football shirt. And of course, he's Jewish himself and close to the president of Israel, so hardly a neo-Nazi. But and also AI is being used for some automated artillery shelling. If we reverse it back around the other way, where AI can also help save lives in this unfortunate situation, is early threat detection. So for your defensive systems to detect these missiles and artillery systems, and so that you can try and either disperse the civilian or population before they get hit, or try and intercept those missiles. So that's one example. And of course, on the healthcare side, we've talked before about remote medicine. Now, of course, on the front line, including where civilians, including women and children, may also be hit, maybe in areas where the appropriate medical treatment isn't necessarily fully there, or specialist treatment, and it can be provided remotely for assistance through AI, as another example. So these are ways on the actual frontline threat discovery, try and prevent the missile or shelling coming in, or giving early warning to the local populations. And then in the wider sense, I won't try to steal the thunder because I think we're going to go there later, but AI ultimately, this war will be over, and when it is, AI can play a big role in helping the recovery and the post-reconstruction phase, building a new advanced economy, the energy systems. I think the minister of Ukraine pointed out it's going to take, as of last night, the damage done to infrastructure will take 2 years to rebuild, transportation, etc., and energy. So again, AI can play a big role there in helping enable that, assist that, and coming back with clean, advanced technologies so that Ukraine can emerge as a new advanced economy.
Good stuff. Utpal, what's your point of view on that?
Yeah, I think very nicely put together by Imtiaz. So, Shailendra, what I think is a very fundamental issue, because today, if you look at, everybody says that we as a world citizen, okay, or a common man, we have got the soft power, okay, soft power to exercise our opinions, our views, wherever it matters, okay, uh, for any kind of issues which is of our concern or kind of thing. So now, but if you look at, because we have got social media, we have got all other things, but in this particular war, I have not seen that it is happening in a rigorous manner. Okay, so although because it is only because of a couple of political leaders. Okay, so it is their decision. Everything is happening as per their will. Okay, and we as a world citizen, we don't have anything or any ways to express our views, and our views are not at all counted at all in any places. So how AI can help? Okay, bring in kind of a ecosystem wherein actually this world citizen, okay, they can exercise their opinion, their rights into this kind of a scenario, whether it will be a war or it could be a pandemic or it could be anything and everything, because we don't know. So this is something I think AI can definitely help. Can we build a voting system wherein people across the citizens across the globe put their opinions, their votes, so that it can be showcased to the leaders, okay, world leaders. The hey, see guys, okay, 90% of the people, they are not looking for any kind of, they are not happy with the war, so stop it. Okay, so I think today these things are not there. So I think till now AI has been used for very small ROI driven purposes, right? It has not yet been used for a larger perspective. I think now we as leaders, AI leaders, or probably other leaders of the world, they need to bring AI to solve this larger perspective. Okay, so that is one thing I think we should definitely do, Shailendra.
Good stuff. Sunil, what's your point of view?
Right. So, Shailendra, in my view, AI may not be in a position to stop the war, but what can really happen is that we can use all the data that we are collecting post Russia attacking Ukraine. You know, so much of information that has been collected in terms of weapons used by Russia, right? Places that they have attacked. There were also cyber attacks that were launched, and all these cyber attacks leave a lot of footprints. So I think what one can do is glean all the data and insights which can perhaps prepare us for a next war which might happen. I think this will help us so that, from a future standpoint. But in my view, I think Shailendra, AI will definitely help in the recovery, because when you talk about recovery, I think what is very, very important is to build the infrastructure quickly, especially in Ukraine, which has been bombarded for the last 1 week. And I think one very important component of that infrastructure is telecom infrastructure. And I'm from the telecom industry, so I'm kind of biased towards this. But without the telecom infrastructure, you just can't communicate, right? So I think AI will play a huge role there in terms of making sure that you're able to identify those cell sites where you're going to place the towers, get the network infrastructure up and running, and even other aspects. So because recovery is going to take some time, you would want to optimize on all the resources that a country has, be it energy, be it water, and so on and so forth. And AI can definitely play a huge part in that in terms of making sure that you're able to optimize all the infrastructure that you have. Plus, of course, in the area of healthcare, AI will definitely play a big part. You know exactly typical challenges, problems that people went through, and all the data can definitely help. The insights that you get from that can help in future situations, Shailendra. So I think AI will play a much bigger role in the recovery than as opposed to trying to stop the war, because I don't think anyone can read Putin's mind today. So I'm not even AI.
No, something very interesting you said, being able to prepare ourselves for the next such situation. I think that's very interesting. And that brings in a kind of a thought in my mind, looking at what led to the war. If we go hindsight, or if we, next time if that happens, could we create a sequence of events that actually leads to a war so that we can actually stop that? Maybe A plus B plus C plus D would lead to a particular action. If we can learn something like that from this particular engagement, this particular the whole war thing, I think that could be very, very beneficial, because then you could stop it, because you know that this is going to lead towards something like this. I think that was very, very interesting. Getting towards the, you said healthcare, Sunil. So from healthcare perspective, because there are lots of people who've been hurt and who are dying in this particular state, in this particular case in Ukraine. Uh, what do you think can AI do in this particular environment where it's a kind of a no-go zone for doctors and there are only limited doctors in that space? Do you have any idea on that?
I think if you have good telecom infrastructure in place and people cannot visit a doctor, so they can always do a telecall to the doctor. And I think and if the patients have enough medical records, and then obviously you can analyze all the past records and you are able to diagnose what the issue is and prescribe the right medicine. But I think the whole premise is going to shift, Shailendra, to more predictive medicine, right, and personalized medicine. That's the way forward. unlike today, where it is not the case, right? So I think from a healthcare standpoint, one is far more predictive capabilities based on historical records of people, health records, and secondly, personalized medicine. I think that's the way forward, Shailendra, in my view, from a healthcare standpoint.
No, that's perfectly fine. So let's move on out from war and talk. The other thing which is really impacting us, at least in Australia, is the floods. So the climate change, the whole climate change thing is happening, and you won't believe that the north of my state and the south of Queensland are underwater at this particular point in time, and it's really, really impacting. So how can we use AI to mitigate climate change? Any thoughts around that, Imtiaz? I'll go with you.
Yeah, sure. So, I was the founder at Morgan Stanley of their climate finance and carbon trading business, served as global head of that. So I was a pioneer in that field. And I think even what we see, though, linking it back to the current situation, don't forget that Russia and Ukraine between them provide 29% of the world's wheat produce. So we can using predictive analytics forecasting. I mean, it's unfortunate reality that it's going to have an impact on the supplies, which will affect countries globally, whether it's Australia. Australia may be geographically far away from Ukraine and Russia, but it will still impact there. And indeed, right across the LDCs, the least developed countries, where bread is often a staple food, unfortunately, are all going to get impacted. The energy price shocks, which have an impact globally. However, what we do see is that there's a report from PwC that was commissioned by Microsoft that showed that by using AI across 4 sectors, specifically energy, transportation, water, and agriculture, we could reduce by 2030 2.4 gigatons of carbon dioxide emissions, which is equivalent, if I recall, to the annual emissions of a large, quite a large-sized country, close to Germany or Austria, plus a few others grouped together. So it's a large amount of efficiency that can be found. At the same time, it would actually generate 38 million net jobs, new jobs globally, according to that report, and add $5.2 trillion to GDP. So it's a bit of a no-brainer, and in particular when we see, for example, how renewable energy is achieving economies of scale and often undercutting fossil fuels on the marginal cost of production of electricity from wind and solar as their costs have collapsed, especially wind power. The big challenge is being things like storing it, because what do you do if you're producing at times when you don't need the electricity, etc., and versus when you do need it if there isn't either wind or sunshine around. And there, I think battery storage, improved battery storage, combined with AI techniques to help optimize that is going to be really key to enabling that, and smart grids, etc., to scale. So there are huge opportunities there, and indeed, I think again this can be brought back to helping rebuild Ukraine. And coming back to Sunil's point about 5G, I think 5G will play a big role, or telecoms will play a big role combined with AI in enabling this rebuild, and indeed serving as a template for other countries around the world. However, what we do see is, unfortunately, telecoms infrastructure being targeted, and it's great to see Elon Musk using Starlink. And then you wonder whether or not perhaps the satellite model might help accelerate the scaling of 5G across Africa and elsewhere, for example, certain parts of Asia, certain parts of Latin America. I don't know, maybe that's going to be another way to help scale the 5G reach in regions where building a 5G infrastructure might be a bit prohibitive or expensive for them. So there are a lot of things that we can learn from this, but definitely AI combined with 5G will have a huge role to play. Another statistic I'll give is that as we scale AI alongside 5G, the US EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, back in 2018, showed that advancing ICT solutions could result in massively reduced traffic, both on the existing networks where you have a lot of traffic between client front ends and servers, and also road traffic, car usage, as you go more and more towards virtual meetings. And that would result in 1.4 megatons, was it gigatons or billion tons anyway? It's a very large number, basically, of carbon dioxide that can be reduced. 20%, basically, 20% of vehicle emissions in the US can actually be reduced as a result of going to this AI plus 5G model. So there's huge potential there to generate massive gains and efficiencies that also translate to economic benefits as well as environmental benefits.
No, I totally agree with you. I think energy and the advancement using AI can make a huge difference. What do you think, Sunil, around that? How do you think AI can impact the climate change side of things? Coming from a telco background, and Imtiaz just mentioned how 5G in association with AI can make a huge difference as well.
Absolutely. I think, Shailendra, to handle the huge capacities of 5G, 5G are talking about massive speeds, very low latency, humongous amount of traffic being generated, and you really need AI to be able to handle all of that stuff. But coming specifically to your question about climate change, Shailendra, I just wanted to pick up two industries which contribute a lot to climate change. And I'll also very briefly touch upon a couple of examples how we've helped companies optimize their energy usage, water usage, and so on. The first example which I want to give is in the agriculture space. We partnered with a company called Precision King, and here there were fields in Arkansas in the US which use a lot of water for paddy cultivation, and this is something which is across anywhere in the world, including in India. A lot of water gets utilized in paddy cultivation. And traditionally, how paddy gets cultivated is that the fields have to be flooded with 4 inches of water, and a lot of water gets wasted as well. And here you can use techniques like alternate wetting and drying, where you really don't need to maintain that 4 inch of flood. You can have pumps that are IoT enabled, which will pump water only when you really need it, right? And so that way, what happens is that when you're reducing the amount of water, it actually prevents what is called as an anaerobic condition. And anaerobic condition exists when there's a lot of water, and that generates methane. However, by using IoT-enabled pumps, you regulate the use of water, less use of water, less methane generated, less use of pumps, less electricity used, and when less electricity is used, lesser is the carbon emission. So you can see the cascading impact it would have, less water and the environmental impact. And this is something which can be replicated anywhere else. There are other water-intensive crops, and technology, IoT, and AI can definitely play a big part in trying to do that. The second industry which generates a lot of CO2 emissions is manufacturing. And again, we work with companies where, for example, in a shop floor or in a factory, you're finding manufacturers today using technology to optimize energy generated from all the industrial assets, right? So most of them have clear sustainability development goals, are working towards that, and technology is playing a huge part in that, trying to reduce energy consumption, right? So the lesser the energy used, obviously lesser CO2 emission. And not to forget, Shailendra, supply chain digitalization, because supply chains got very badly disrupted. AI is playing a huge role now. Using digitalization of supply chains, you can make sure that the truck goes from point A to point B using the shortest possible route. You can use route optimization. Again, you need to integrate with multiple data sources, weather information, traffic management systems, and so on. And by doing this, you again make sure that you are able to reduce the CO2 emissions, right? So I think if you are able to target agriculture and manufacturing, it generates a lot of water and energy, and the telcos will play a part by providing the infrastructure that is needed. That will play a huge role in making sure that we are able to impact climate change in a positive manner, Shailendra.
Good stuff. Thank you, Sunil. Thank you for mentioning that. And I think it really made a great sense in terms of focusing on these two sectors, which would make a difference. Before I go to Utpal, guys, if you've got to the audience, I think there are around about 50 people watching us. If you've got a question, please put that in the comment section. I'll take that in the audience Q&A. And please, don't forget to like and share this video with as many people as possible. It won't hurt. It's just a like, and it'll only give us much more appreciation to come up with such more content going forward. Utpal, what's your thought around climate change and how AI can help in reducing the climate change and carbon emissions?
Yeah, I think Shailendra, both Sunil and Imtiaz has touched upon a lot of things, and I know Imtiaz has already mentioned a lot of numbers, right? But when it comes to any technology impacting sustainability at large, I think there are there are direct impacts and there are indirect impacts. Also, there are short-term and long-term kind of impacts. Also, you can see. I think first of all, bringing that kind of a transparency and bringing that kind of a short-term and long-term impact and direct and indirect impact uh, uh, upfront, in front of whether it is kind of a investment point of view, because many of the projects are being invested and investors are definitely today looking at the sustainability point, and also the execution of the project. I think AI can help a lot because we can probably only see the direct impact and we can give that numbers. Okay, but if you see, there are a lot of indirect factors, okay, which are also attributing, and also if you look at long term thing, then probably the cascading effects of that will be much more at a larger scale. So how we can bring all those things and bring a transparent kind of a dashboard in front of everyone, okay, so that people can look into that. Hey, if I am going to invest in this particular project, or if I am going to, this is the sustainability value, okay, that is going to come over there. Here, I think AI can play a major role. AI analytics, whatever you say. And I think another interesting point what Sunil has just mentioned is like, this is also kind of indirect, you can say, the logistic and all. Okay, so optimization of those things. So there is a huge possibility, and I think here not only AI, even the quantum computing is play a role. Now DWeb and all, they are coming up with their quantum algorithms, wherein actually you can do that kind of optimization, because these optimization problems are huge problems. Even alone AI alone cannot solve it if you don't have a parallel kind of a competition kind of a system. So I think these are some areas I probably both Sunil and Imtiaz has touched upon pretty well, Shailendra.
Good stuff. Thank you, Utpal. Guys, if you've got a question, put that in the comment section. Utpal and Sunil, actually, you mentioned about the sustainability, and that brings in UN sustainability goals in mind, and they've been quite focused on climate change and all the other ones as well. I think there are 33 of those, 17 or 33 in my mind. How do you think that AI is going to is helping there in the UN for UN sustainability goals to be resolved? Sunil, what do you think?
Sustainability development goals is creating a diverse workforce, right? I think we need a lot more women coming into the workforce, and I think today when you're talking about AI, there is a lot of bias in the algorithms. I think what typically organizations want to do is to build a diverse team who can actually build those, right? I think the UN Sustainability Development Goal addresses a very important dimension, and that is diversity, right? I think it's absolutely imperative for organizations to have this as on top of the agenda and build a workforce which is a lot more diverse, especially in the AI field, because I think that's where the most of the jobs are going to come in. In other areas, Shailendra, whether it is, I talked about water, I talked about energy management, for example, smart grid. I think, and I can give you an example, in India today, a lot of transmission and distribution losses occur as the power moves from the grid to households. So much of loss, almost 20 to 22% loss. And AI can play a huge part in trying to reduce that loss. You cannot minimize, you cannot eliminate that loss, but you can definitely reduce that loss, right? So when you talk about grid automation and transmission and distribution, and lastly also when you talk about power, transformers. I've been involved in in a couple of projects where we try to make sure that we're able to predict when transformers might fail. When transformers fail, obviously it means power outages and all the stuff. And if you're able to optimize that, that again has an impact on power, right? So specifically in that area, yes, we can definitely see AI being used. And overall real estate, Shailendra, overall real estate, there are a lot of startups who are building some very good, cool AI and IoT solutions that can optimize the entire real estate. And I can give you our own example, Shailendra. In the US, we have more than 600 buildings, and this is pre-pandemic. And heating, ventilation, and ACs, which consume a lot of power, a lot of assets in the building, and we sensorized all of that coupled with AI. We've been able to. The first thing is to measure energy consumption. and then to optimize it. And post having implemented that, Shailendra, we had accrued almost $600 million savings over a few years. That's significant, right? So one is you save, and secondly, you're also helping the environment in a big way, right? So I think there are enough and more use cases when you talk about from an SDG standpoint, energy, power, so on and so forth. Shailendra.
So let me get down to one of the key goals from the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and one of them is gender equality. And today is International Women Day. So I think Utpal, I'll throw this to you. How can AI help in that particular one of that particular goal in driving sustainability? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, there are 17. So out of 17, 18, I think, if
17,
I
yeah.
remember correctly, yeah. So I think, yeah, 17. So I think the most important, or where AI can play a role, is education, of course. And because that's where, the edutechs are, that's why it is coming very, very rigorously here. And the second thing that I can see, the economic growth, apart from the hunger and all those things, the economic growth. So I'll talk about economic growth later, because as I'm coming from a fintech background. But coming to this gender equality, probably, I mean, it starts with, I think, the education part of it, because the education of a girl child, right? And how we can help the girl child, not only getting her primary education, but also bring her to a stage, okay, wherein she is self-sustainable. Okay, she can do something of her own, whether it is kind of a job or a small scale business or whatever it is. Today there are enormous opportunities there. So how to bring those kind of things to a girl child, okay, who is probably in a rural area, right? So here AI can definitely help. AI and analytics, of course, because you need to also see, like, while government and all other NGOs, organization, even the World Health Organization and all, they are providing all kind of UN and all are providing all those kind of things. Whether these are being utilized properly uh, for uh, for that particular gender or not. Okay, so that is, I think, very, very important. And now coming to uh, the area where I think there is a indirect impact is kind of fintech. And I think in your show only I have mentioned that earlier also. So now fintechs are uh, actually upholding the sustainability goals, right? Because if you look at the entire unbanked population across the globe, it's not only developed countries, but also developing countries, but also developed countries, like even US and all. Okay, how to bring that population, unbanked population, into the financial system, which we call financial inclusion. So in financial inclusion, the fintechs are helping a lot with their products and services, because if you look at Paytm, if you look at any kind of other this kind of apps available in other payment apps available there. So now, uh, even to the poorest grade of the society, okay, probably, or somebody who is not into kind of organized labor, who are into probably your driver or your plumber or something. So they are now being part of the financial ecosystem, and you have got a financial traceability to their income and all those things. And through that, any banks and financial institutions are now being able to provide them financial aids, okay, whether it is in terms of loans or in terms of probably insurance, health insurance, there are other insurance, life insurance kind of a thing, which was not possible before, because all the transactions that used to happen through cash. Okay, and for a financial institution, they don't have any kind of background of the financial background of that particular person. But now Paytm coming into picture and all other things are coming. Even a street shop, the banks are having their financial, how much he's earning every day, right? So they can have. So I think this is a very, 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 very big impact. Okay, apart from removing poverty, clean water, and all other things, because here basically we are bringing people to a stage where they are not only looking for some kind of a financial aid from the government or NGOs kind of a thing, they themselves are becoming self-sustainable, right? So this is a big impact that I can see, Shailendra.
Good stuff. Imtiaz, what do you think about the UN Sustainable Goals? Which ones of those can be resolved using AI? 17 of those.
Well, I think AI can cut across all of them, but let's take a couple of use case examples to give a visualization. So when Sunil mentioned line losses, so I started my career at National Grid and used to model things like line losses and planning the infrastructure, etc. model. But apart from the line losses, building these grid transmission lines are very expensive. Now, you've got areas, for example, in rural India and even in like South Africa, you've got the townships in the center. Now, some of these locations are not connected with the grid transmission system because it's expensive, and also you'll have high line losses. Now, imagine this scenario where you can put something called embedded generation. Embedded means it's not connected to the main national grid system, your main grid network, but instead is embedded locally. Now, it could be a solar plant or multiple solar panels, it could be wind, it could be a combination of them. And now you can start to actually give electricity to schools. You can now create schools and hospitals locally, or medical facilities, if not a hospital, and schools, etc., in these remote villages. And you can start to also give them more economic opportunity as a result. Where AI can really help play there is this example of battery storage and optimizing that and helping bring the efficiencies there, because AI, including in R&D, can keep on helping improve that battery storage technology. Because if they're not connected to the grid, what are they going to do at night? They're going to have to burn for lighting, etc. So again, that's one example of how AI can play quite a role with battery storage, helping scale embedded generation in remote areas that right now don't have grid connection. And then it kind of impacts the point that you were raising about them bringing education to all, including women in these girls in these remote areas who right now perhaps don't have those same opportunities and more economic opportunities. Agriculture, we need to feed the world, in the sense that the projections, at least the consensus view, is that we're going to go from approximately 7.8 to 8 billion people today towards 10 billion or more over the next 20 to 30 years, 30 years, 40, 50 years, anyway, across this century anyway. And of course, at the same time, the impact of climate change, unfortunately, is rolling out and is going to disrupt areas of Africa and elsewhere, where we will start to get challenges like water supply and famine, which in turn, with resource constraints and growing populations, can lead to more war as well and more refugee situations as they seek to escape war zones. What AI can do on the agriculture side is help optimize and maintain that food supply. Now, examples of AI in agriculture, as simple examples, is using computer vision, for example, to detect for a drone flying over when the crops are ready, so that you harvest them on time, before, not too soon, not too late. Another one is in terms of analysis of pests, so that you can get warning, early sign warning of the location of certain pests, and then try and contain it before it spreads. Again, flying drones over these areas with computer vision, simulating and trying to model for these water issues, and then trying to target how you're going to manage that crop and the crop yield, and how much you're going to store for future usage. There's many areas where AI can actually have impact on the ground and help on the sustainable development aspects. So those are just a couple of examples. And then, of course, on the education side, on women, for example, if we can use combining with 5G networks, whether through conventional transmission or whether through satellite transmission of 5G into remote areas, where you can now, in this era of standalone 5G, where we'll be able to give immersive education or reach out for education, where a teacher could be in a big city because maybe that village doesn't have school teachers across all the different subjects, and then from big city be teaching and helping mentor and tutor those children, including girls, so that they start to get more opportunities and we start to develop across those whole areas. So those are just a few examples.
No, okay, that's very interesting. A question or sorry, yes, Sunil.
Shailendra, just a couple of things. I think one of the important goal of UN is also cleaner air, right? And I think today you definitely can use AI and IoT together in combination, using air quality monitors to find out pockets in the cities where the quality of air is really bad. You have air quality index which measures that, and I think definitely technology will play a big part in making sure that you can control that. If there are pockets where the air quality index is very poor, you can maybe optimize traffic there so that you can do something about it. And the other important area, Shailendra, is a lot of food gets wasted. And today we actually work with a couple of companies to how do you convert food into biofuel or a fertilizer, right? So I think, and that's where again technology like IoT and AI together can play a big part in making sure that they're able to, completely eliminate food wastage, or even if there is food wastage, we can convert it into something which can be reused, right? So I think AI will play a big part in that as well.
No, I totally agree with you on food wastage. That's a big area of concern, because as we are becoming a developed world, a lot of food is being wasted as we go forward, and if that could be turned around and shared with those underprivileged, then I think that could make a huge difference. Guys, if you're watching this, you've got a question, put that in the comment section. I'll very quickly, very soon take those questions and bring them to the guests and ask them about the question. Sticking to the the UN development goals, it's a sustainable development goal still. Um, let's talk about the extinction of animals and plants and all that stuff, coral reef in near Australia. So how can we protect um, forests, coral reefs, and plants and animals from extinction using AI? That is something that we should also think about. What do you think, Imtiaz? I'll come back to you.
No, Chandra, that's a great point. And so again, using computer vision, we're able to do real-time or near real-time analytics on forests, and indeed to do monitoring of coral reefs. So a lot of computer vision using AI or deep neural networks has been developed there. And some people say to me, well, you can already get an image of a forest from a satellite, and the human can sit there and analyze it. Yeah, sure, but it takes a huge amount of time and a huge army of people to go through that to keep on analyzing those images, right? So what AI does is it enables near real-time analytics, so you can actually detect illegal logging or activity or destruction of the forest in near real time. And if there is a will, of course, if there is a local will, you can actually then work with local law enforcement officials to intervene in those areas before the damage gets more extensive. So it allows for real-time analytics on that basis. And again, the coral reefs are a huge area, because if our seas die, if our oceans die, and there's that projection that by 2050 we'll have more plastics in our seas and oceans than there are fish and wildlife, which will be devastating for the ecosystem and indeed the entire food chain as well, including the whole animal kingdom. So in actual fact, the ability to monitor coral reef in near real time, analyze it, and make interventions where appropriate, it also allows us to measure and evaluate and know what we're doing, so we can actually see what's happening. So absolutely, forest protection, coral reef protection using AI computer vision is going to be really fundamental going forwards.
Yeah, computer vision gives me another example, and I think when that terrorism act happened at the Brussels airport, I think computer vision could have played an important role to actually identify and stop that. Computer vision can be can be doing great stuff going forward, stopping terrorism and all that stuff. Utpal, what do you think about utilizing looking at plant extinction and animal extinction in that space? What do you think? How we can use AI to stop that?
Yeah, Shalendra, so for the plant before that, actually one another use case which I think is like wild or the forest fire detection. Okay, I mean looking at different parameters. So probably some of the parameters definitely are the so probably humidity, wind, and all other parameters, and also some seasonality. Of course, you need to bring into consideration. And if you run even a statistical model, okay, I'm not even going into any kind of deep learning neural networks, probably a statistical model. So by doing that, I think some kind of prediction definitely can be done, okay, for any kind of wildfire and all those things, okay, because that is a major problem. I think even in Australia also, this is one of the major this thing. Now coming to this extinguishing of different plants, so this is a very interesting area. In fact, during the start of the pandemic, one company which is I'm not taking their name, but they are into 200 years into this Ayurvedic medicine preparation. So in India, Ayurvedic is a parallel stream of medicine and treatment, which is very very popular. And I think half of our population are relying on that. Okay, so especially for any kind of chronic diseases or any diseases which are related to lifestyle and all those things. So now I think their R&D division came to me, and they told like using AI, because they don't have much idea about AI. Can we predict the possibility of finding some kind of plants in the areas of Northeast, than in the Himachal and in the southern area of Kerala? Okay, so because this, I mean, these medicinal plants are supposed, I mean, normally grows in these areas, but due to the deforestation and all which is happening nowadays, this it is very difficult to find those kind of plants. And some of those medicinal plants, even you cannot grow it artificially. I mean, if you provide all the ingredients, also some of the plants, because it only develops in an environment in the forest with that kind of things. So it was a very interesting use case. They came up and they were giving me some of the parameters that can be considered to do that kind of prediction, because ultimately it's a data set that you require, right? So this are the features that is required to get that kind of a plan in some place. But due to the pandemic and all those things, I mean, the discussion didn't went further and nothing happened. But I think this is a very interesting use case that we can think of. Like similarly, I think what is the possibility of a particular plant, okay, which is probably about to be extinguished, kind of thing. How we can predict that what are the conductive factors that can be provided to the plant so that it can grow in number, or it can grow in the forest, kind of thing. So I think this can be done. Definitely a deeper analysis is required, because here there are a lot of environmental and that geographical factors comes into picture. Okay, probably there is a huge chance that we miss it out some of the factors which are very very important for that kind of a prediction. Yes.
No, I totally agree with you. Sunil, what do you think about coral reef plant extinction and how AI can help in resolving those kind of situations?
Right, I think so. So, Shailendra, I think Imtiaz and Utpal pretty much covered quite a few. I'll just add a little to that. So, I think what Imtiaz mentioned about computer vision, absolutely perfect solution for that. You could have drones which will do a tree count. I think that would help. And I don't want to name countries, but there are countries which check the amount of deforestation which happens every year. And what they do in their calculation is they include even trees and plants which are planted in the cities, which are not really true forests. So I think with the power of data, when you use computer vision with drones, you can actually get a true count of how much of deforestation has occurred. specific areas where that has happened, right? So I think leveraging data, you can do that. Secondly, when you talk about ocean, I think today there are, you can have these BOU buoys, they call them buoys, which are dipped into the ocean, which measures the salinity of water, temperature of it, and all that, to know under which conditions all the fishes and all that survive. So I think leveraging that, combining with AI, you'll be able to predict to a certain degree of accuracy what would be the temperature a few years later, and then you can take corrective action quickly to make sure that what is under the ocean, under the seas, they are able to survive. Right. So I think a lot of data that can be generated from that, and I think I know of a few top colleges in India which are actually doing studies in that area, Shailendra.
No, that's amazing. And actually, I'm really impressed with the kind of thought leadership that is coming in this particular session, where you guys are explaining some really great use cases. But one thing that amazes me again and again, that technology has actually moved that far, but it is still the policymakers who don't get that chance of utilizing that and moving at the same speed as technology is moving at the moment. Okay, before I get to the audience Q&A, and I'll quickly jump on there. So, guys, if you've got a question, put that in the comment section. I'll take that question around how we can use AI to create a better world. But before I go there, one question that comes to mind again and again, that is around transparency. And in the times when computer vision comes into play, which is taken away, which is seen as a breach of privacy for a lot of people, as CCTVs, which is everywhere and anywhere. How can AI help in creating a better transparency across governments, across individuals, across people, but keeping in mind that people are conscious about their privacy as well? And I'll put that question to Utpal first and then move on. So, Utpal, what do you think?
I think very important question, and there are many aspects to that because I think we have discussed in similar line in the other shows of you also earlier. So I think for AI, definitely if you want to bring that kind of a transparency, that kind of a personalization, you need to supply some amount of data to the algorithms. Otherwise, it will not be able to do that. And it goes, if you go to human also, the same thing happens here. If you have a personal assistant and if you human assistant, and if you cannot provide that kind of data, he or she will also not be able to perform well for you. Now coming to the transparency to the government, because you have mentioned the government part also. So that is basically a larger area. I think what government or what parties, political parties promise, okay, before they form the government, okay, when they go for the election, and what actually they performs, and also the transparency into that. I think still it is not there in any country. Okay, for that matter, I will not quote any particular country, but any country, it is not there in that way. That this has been promised, and after 5 years or 6 years, this has been achieved. Okay, and also, I mean, what do you call? I mean, probably the long-term effect of that, because many of the initiatives that has been started probably will not be able to see that their impact in 5 years. Okay, so that will come probably 10, 15, 20 years kind of thing, big projects. Okay, so whether it is kind of a big university like today, digital university in India, it is talking about digital currency. They are talking about. So if you actually want to see, or any kind of infrastructure project, if you want to see the benefits of that, probably the term is longer, right? So, I mean, AI can definitely help to bring that kind of a transparency. Okay, it can actually translate, okay, what is there in their election manifesto and what has actually happened. It is as good as in a development substantial development life cycle. We follow something called requirement traceability matrix. Okay, this is the requirement, and whether test case has been written for that or not, or the test coverage is there or not. Okay, so same thing can be done into this political system and government system if we can implement AI, Shailendra. Yeah.
Good stuff. Sunil, what do you think?
Right. So Shailendra, I think what is really needed is a very good framework when it comes to governance. How do you handle transparency? Ethics, obviously, very important. You obviously want to make sure that there are no biases which are creeping into all those algorithms. So I think today there are job profiles where there is an algorithmic bias manager, guys who figure out if there are any biases in the algorithm. So I think calls for a very robust framework, governance. Plus, I think what is very important is if you're talking about from government standpoint, data privacy, data security, extremely important. In India, right now, the parliament is debating the data protection bill. Eventually, when this becomes an act, I think that will govern in terms of how data gets stored, processed, harnessed, and so on and so forth. Right? So I think data is obviously going to be a critical part of the whole thing, Shailendra, from a transparency standpoint. And there's one area which I quickly wanted to touch upon, which is again, when you talk about creating a better world, Shailendra, I'm just going off on a little tangent here, but AI and cybersecurity, Shailendra, because today cybersecurity is going to be the number one risk in the world today. I think the World Economic Forum came up with a report saying that cyber risk is the number one risk, and the future wars are going to be cyber wars. We are already seeing that happen. AI will play a huge part in that, Shailendra. AI and cybersecurity. I think that's going to play. You're dealing with humongous amount of data. You've got to correlate data from multiple sources. And I think it's imperative, not just from an organization standpoint, but even from a government standpoint, to get to a stage where you can minimize the risk. You cannot completely eliminate all the threats, but you can minimize the risk. And you get to a stage where you can actually predict when an attack might hit somebody. And so AI and cybersecurity is extremely important. And I think if you've got a better world, if you want a better world, then that needs to be addressed.
Good. Imtiaz, what do you think about transparency and how AI can help in that space? And is that a concern, if anything?
Yeah, before I go, I'll very quickly mention one more use case from the previous one, because we didn't actually mention animals when you're talking about protecting animals. We mentioned forests, etc., and coral reefs. So a quick example is in Kenya and South Africa and other parts of Africa, there are drones being deployed with computer vision to try and detect poachers. So of course, poaching is being one of the big threats to animal extinction. So I just thought I'd mention that. That's another example of how, because Sunil mentioned the drones, and that's one example of how computer vision is being deployed to protect animals. In terms of the data thing, look, the way the world of AI and big data has worked so far has been one where you use, whether it's social media, whether it's Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever, and your front end, your client is going to a server, probably on the cloud usually, and that's where all the data is. That's where your analytics are. That's where your AI algorithms are set. In the era of standalone 5G, we're going to see more of the AI coming to the world around us, on the edge of the network, on our devices, on sensors, etc., which means that it's going to be increasingly disaggregated or decentralized data where the AI operates on. And that means whether it's going to be 5G enabled glasses in the future, in the not too distant future, with mixed reality, or AI operating directly on your mobile. So we go from smartphones to what we call intelligent phones, intelligent devices, intelligent here not being at the level of the human brain, but being able to make at least some element of decision making and analytics. So we're going into that world, and in that world, what we need, apart from the cybersecurity risk, is federated learning with differential privacy. That is the key solution. That is the one that will enable machine learning to still scale, including in areas like healthcare, where data is a challenge, and things like when you're wearing your mixed reality glasses at home, you don't want Mr. Zuckerberg, seeing everything you're doing in your home environment, right? So, but you still want that 5G enabled personalized experience. So federated learning with differential privacy is going to be the key tool. Apple already use it in many cases. Google have a version which is simulating it with Google TensorFlow, TensorFlow federated. And whilst there's an OpenMind initiative with PySift, another one is flower.dev, which claims to be the first one for federated learning that is interoperable across different code and hardware systems. That came out at the University of Cambridge and Avignon in France, and some others, I think, at UCL. So that is a key example where the industry needs to get together, apart from the governance frameworks that Sunil mentioned, but actually come together and let's work on federated learning. Let's work on federated learning as a key solution with industry and government working together, because, again, an example of the dark side on this war is the information war. And you look at Russia, for example, is going in the dark. Citizens there are in the dark. So even if Utpal and Shailendra, your own point about using AI, or the point Utpal made about giving voice to citizens, well, in Russia, they don't have that, because if they speak out, they go to jail. 15-year jail sentence in some cases has been introduced. In many cases, the social media and internet is being disconnected, right? So in actual fact, the ability to have federated learning with differential privacy would stop us sleepwalking into this big brother world. Ukraine is fighting hard for its democracy or freedom rights. How funny if we end up just giving it all to Mr. Zuckerberg or whatever, and sleepwalk into Big Brother world without even realizing it. So in actual fact, the way that we can really help resolve this is enabling machine learning to work and scale, so we get that personalization, the analytics, whereby but we can still have the privacy that differential privacy enables. That is going to be the big thing. And so really getting people together across industry, across the governments and regulators. And Shailendra, you made the point, which is a problem. And I know Utpal's mentioned it before in previous sessions. The regulators and politicians don't understand digital. And they don't, you go and tell federated learning and differential privacy, and they stare at you, what? Come on, guys. We need to grab this solution and make it work now.
No, I totally agree. I think there needs to be a collaboration between the politicians and the policymakers, I'll call them, the industry and the experts. And if they don't do that, the chances are that we're going to get delayed as we go forward, and we're only going to be harming ourselves than just making a better world or creating a better world. I think it needs a bit of working together, if I may say that. Okay, let me very quickly get onto the audience Q&A, and let's pick up what audience are talking about at the moment from the audience Q&A section. So give me a second and I'll be very quickly getting there. Okay, let's start with a couple of highs. So there is a hi from Raktim Singh. He says he's from Bangalore. We've got an audience from Bangladesh, Dr. Tanveer Amir. Hi, Dr. Tanveer, how are you? Let's look at some questions. So the first question, Utpal, hi Utpal, hope you remember me from Ferminic days. And you can pronounce it better than me, I think. This is Arindam Banerjee. Hi Arindam, how are you? I have a simple question. In AI, does all approaches ultimately translate to automation? Are there cases on AI wherein it does not do anything to improve the efficiency, rather may become an overhead, however, still has to be embraced because of its non-perceivable benefits?
Yeah, hi, Arindam. I know Arindam, so he was my colleague in one of the organizations. Okay, so I think good question. So Arindam, just to answer your question, so if you look at, so last 200, 300 years, if you go back to history, whatever technological innovations we have done is one way or the other to eliminate human labor. So that element will always be there. That automation element will always be there, even for a cognitive technology or cognitive science like artificial intelligence. But I would say it is not only always for only the cost cutting or what do you call the time cutting kind of thing. It is not, because the other values that it brings into the table, that makes AI different from any other conventional automation that we have been doing since long. So I think the examples could be in many places. wherein it is more like there are lots of human error used to happen, right? So, so for example, for insurance claim processing, okay, so I can give that example because I have been working in that kind of a environment. So thousands of people are working in the back office, okay, just to process your claim. Oh, so you got hospitalized and you do all kind of treatment, all your bills, all your prescriptions, diagnostic reports, everything comes as a bundle into a cloud drive. Okay, and this back office team, thousands of people sitting there. Okay, so they are eyeballing into each and everything, machine generated report, human written prescriptions, the bills and all those things kind of thing. And there used to be a lot of errors, and the lead time for getting those kind of insurance processed, it's huge. It takes months actually. Okay, but now if you look at it, is a couple of days because they have already implemented some kind of AI element, some kind of cognitive unstructured document processing systems, which can do it in a couple of minutes, and then couple of verification, digital verification and human verification, and you get your claim. I mean, your hospital gets the claim amount from the insurance company. So there are enormous benefits, and that's the reason AI has got that kind of a hype today. I think no other technologies has got that kind of a hype till now.
Good stuff. Imtiaz, you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I'd echo what Utpal said, which is that, and the other thing that is that I'd say that AI in its current form is augmenting in many cases and enabling increased productivity or efficiency gains. So again, if you look at some of the world leaders in AI, you look at your likes of a Google or Alphabet as a parent company is known. You look at a Facebook or Meta as it's now rebranded, and Microsoft, etc. These are all companies that, if you chart their employment growth over the last 10 or 20 years, if AI was just about automation and cost cutting, they shouldn't really have grown their workforce. Whereas in actual fact, they've grown their workforce dramatically, exponentially. And the same with the likes of Amazon, who've applied a lot of AI. And in actual fact, it's been the digital laggards who didn't adopt AI and digital technology where the job losses have actually occurred. So really, it's about jobs change over time, and industries change. In actual fact, the ability to leverage AI to augment humans, especially in this era of big data, lots of data everywhere, to make sense of that data, to operationalize things, and then have the humans, if you like, optimizing them and gaining revenue. Again, as Utpal pointed out, AI has often been used for revenue growth. Again, you look at the profit and loss statements, the income statements rather, of the likes of Alphabet, the owner of Google and others. It's really been a lot of revenue generation and business creation that has been driving a lot of the success of AI, as well as cost efficiencies. So just throw that out there.
No, I totally agree. It's not only about automation. It's far more than that. It's solving business problems. It's creating business. It's creating outcomes, and those outcomes could be in different shapes and forms, which people could actually use to resolve. Sunil, do you want to add anything, or should I move on?
No, I just want to quickly add to what Imtiaz mentioned. It's just not about cost efficiency and improving overall operational efficiency, but it's all about trying to see how you can leverage AI for better business models that can be generated, to glean more insights from customers and offer more personalized products and services. Being all things being equal, I think those who provide superior customer experience, they are the ones who are going to win this game, so to speak, right? And AI can definitely be leveraged. You've got to tweak your business model and come up with something very unique and differentiated, and that's how you're able to. That's how you'll be able to survive and grow. And the AI will be a huge part of that.
Good stuff. Okay, the next question is from Dr. Ramesh Khare, and he says, "What is the technology stack and skills required and immediate attention to create talent pool which is lacking nowadays?" Who wants to go first? Imtiaz, you want to go?
Well, I think it's been quite well documented that that we need more data scientists, more engineers in general as well. So that's one area. So right across the spectrum, science, STEM in general, but data science, engineering, software development, are all going to be key. But also, I think even on the business side, getting an understanding, because what's been shown is that the number one reason for failure for AI projects, machine learning projects, or data science in general, is a failure of understanding the objective, where the data science or machine learning engineers go and build something that might be technically solid, but it doesn't solve a business problem for the business side. And the business team don't understand AI and machine learning or data science, and vice versa. Data scientists don't understand the business model of the underlying business of the company. So really finding that common language, getting the business team, you don't expect the business team to necessarily be coders, but getting them to understand how AI works, what it is, what its benefits are, how to adopt it, how it can actually bring potential, and getting at least some of the data science team, maybe the senior members of the data science team, being able to talk a bit in a way that the business team can actually understand. So it's not just going out with a confusion matrix or loss curves, all the technical statistics, but actually saying, with visualizations and explanations. I think that's also going to be key for enabling the scaling of AI and helping the talent pool.
And I think you nailed it, Imtiaz. The most important, in my view, the most important aspect is people understanding statistics. A lot of people actually miss that, and they try to do the technology stack and the other side of things, but they miss the stats of it. And that is the most important component. That's the brain, right? That's the machine learning, the brain of machine learning, if I go there, right? And most of the people miss that. The other thing is understanding the domain, understanding what are you trying to solve,
Yeah,
what industry are you looking at solving that for, and understand the nitty gritty of that industry. Most of the people actually come cold and try to answer problems, solve problems without understanding either the domain or
yeah,
having an understanding of stats behind it, and just run and try to solve problems. And I think that is a big no, because what that does is makes it yet another IT project, which it isn't in
yeah,
the first place. And then when it becomes an IT project, they want a requirement document which you can't even define because you don't know what you don't know. And that's the biggest challenge I see in the market at the moment. Anyone wants to add anything, Utpal or Sunil?
Yeah, so Shailendra, I think yeah, both you and Imtiaz has mentioned most of the skills. But what I can see is, of course, it starts with data engineering team, right? Because you require that building that kind of a warehouse or a data lake or kind of thing, or aggregate those data, put into place, do run those kind of transformation, and make the data ready for AI algorithm to use it. So definitely there is a need of a lot of data engineers there, and of course data scientists. But now today, what I can see is, especially in India, we require a lot of people in blockchain. Okay, because after government declared that digital currency, digital university, and all other things coming up, and also we require game developers for metaverse, of course, because this many of the things will come into metaverse that is there. So these are some of the technical skills I think immediately India will require, because already there are good amount of data scientists already there in India, because in last 3-4 years, because of a lot of online education and also offline classes and a lot of other platforms, many people have upskilled themselves into a decent data scientist. But still, I think this game developers, then 3D model builders, and 3D what do you call animation builders, these are also a booming field in coming years, at least in India perspective, Shailendra.
Good stuff. Sunil, you want to add, or should I move on?
Just quickly, Shailendra, I just want to add that, I think those who want to kind of carve a career in the AI space, I think you need to know how to handle time series data which comes from the sensors. The traditional databases won't work to handle time series data. You need different kinds of databases for that, handling structured and unstructured data. But I think what is very important, Shailendra, is while you get an understanding of AI and you build your skill sets, you also have to build a good understanding of the cloud architectures, because all these applications are eventually running in the cloud, and one needs to have a multi-dimensional view in terms of how everything works end to end, right? As Imtiaz mentioned, you've got to have understanding of the domain. You got to have the right skill set to build those AI applications, but you also need to understand how these apps sit on the cloud, understanding of different kind of environments that these operate on, be it on AWS or on Azure or so on. So I think it calls for a very holistic kind of an approach when it comes to technology skill sets, in my view.
Good stuff. Very quickly, one more question, and then I think we should move on. Jaswant Tombarapu says, would like to know more on AI contribution on climate change, and is there any use case to share? Imtiaz, do you want to very quickly talk about that? I think
Yeah, sure. So we gave the example of battery storage, optimization, smart grids as examples. I think increased electrification of vehicles and helping manage that, efficiency gains across the network, including in telecoms, as Sunil mentioned. There was a use case from Google or Alphabet's parent where they used AI to help optimize the cloud storage center, the data centers, to reduce energy consumption that would in turn reduce carbon footprint. So there are a lot of these opportunities across industry for energy optimization, which again in turn reduces carbon footprint. And just helping match supply and demand across the grid, including for renewable energy. And again, in the R&D side, we keep on advancing, applying AI to keep on trying to advance battery storage, green hydrogen potential. All these areas are going to come through going forwards in the future and play a big role.
good stuff. Anyone else wants to add to that, or should I move on? Okay. Finally, one question, and I thought, let me take this question just for the sake of it. Michael Caesar says, why people should know the use of AI? And Utpal, I'll come to you before I just close down the session. But what do you think? It's a very interesting question.
Yeah. So Shailendra, what I have seen is, so I will share my experience here. So most of the cases, whether it is in banking and finance, or whether the mobile phone that you are using, or whether it is in retail, for a normal common man or a customer or a consumer, AI is always invisible. Okay, probably hardly you can see AI anywhere, right? So now it is very important that many of the decisions that are being made by an enterprise or an organization or everywhere is actually not by the organization themselves indirectly. It is actually AI. Okay, many cases. So that's how I think people should understand what is AI, because when you are giving some of your decision making to an algorithm, whether it is credit risk assessment, okay, which will decide whether you are eligible for getting any kind of credit or not, or any other things for that matter. Okay, so at least you should understand that what that technology is and how it works. So that's the reason I think the common man. I think his question is more from a common man perspective or a general consumer perspective. So that's the reason I think having at least the idea how AI works will help. And because this is not a magic, neither it is a black box. It is a very well-defined, structured kind of a technology, which gives very, very well-defined answers if it has been built well, trained well. So, just to get that kind of a confidence, people should understand what is AI.
Imtiaz, you want to add something?
We need to know about, first of all, that's good from that part. But we need to know about AI, and we need to educate the world about it, because like it or not, the technology is here. Like it or not, you interact with it all the time. I mean, there's chats on LinkedIn. LinkedIn uses AI to optimize your feed, in effect. Netflix, Google Search, Google Translate, it's Alexa, increasingly your mobile phone. So you're touching it all the time, perhaps without realizing it. And therefore, it's going to come more and more into our lives, especially as standalone 5G scales and more IoT or AI combined with IoT, intelligent edge devices scale, etc. It is our future. It isn't just our current, but it's only going to become more and more of our future. Therefore, understanding it and not fearing it, but understanding how it works, how it can be used, means that we can also apply it for beneficial cases to gain both economic and environmental advantages across our societies.
Good stuff. Sunil, you want to add?
Very quickly, Shailendra, I think I would prefer to use the word augmented intelligence rather than artificial intelligence, because AI is only going to augment a human to make better decisions. And given the world that we're living in, you're bombarded with so much of amount of data. I think many times it kind of clouds our thinking. So I think we need to leverage the power of AI to help us make that big data into smaller data, which we actually need to make the right decisions. So whether it's making the right decisions or predicting with certain degree of accuracy future business outcomes, I would definitely say AI is definitely needed.
Good
Kind
stuff.
of.
Thank you. Finally, a couple of comments. Dr. Ramesh Khare says, thanks, great insights. And Raj Kumar says, great show. Thank you very much. Perfect. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time today. It was pleasure having all three of you on the show. I think we all enjoyed. One thing that you should take away today, that for the first time today, we had 500 viewers on Twitter while we were doing this live. So, which is one of its kind. 500 people watching simulcast. I was thinking we had around about 50, but we had around about 500 just on Twitter. I haven't looked at others, but very quickly I was looking at the other ones. So thank you very much, and it was pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you,
Imtiaz.
Shailendra.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time. It was pleasure having you, the audience, on the show. You guys rocked. Great questions. Really enjoyed them, and I think you enjoyed the show as well. For the first time ever, we had over 500 viewers on Twitter. Again, amazing, amazing feat. Thank you very much, and please, please, please like this video, share it with as many people as possible. If you're watching us on Twitter, please press the follow button. If you're watching us on LinkedIn, press the follow button. If you're watching this on YouTube, press the subscribe button and the bell icon. If you're watching it on Facebook, share, like, thumbs up, whatever you can do to promote this. It will mean a lot to me. Thank you very much, and see you very, very soon. Bye now.